morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody here. Welcome to Clarion. My name's Christian Hellmund. I'm one of the 4 partners in our commercial team. I'm a non-contentious lawyer, and my main focus is energy, low carbon, energy and infrastructure projects. I deal with conventional, non-conventional energies, so that includes electricity, gas, but then also the range of renewables such as wind, solar, biomass, and then going into electric vehicles, energy storage, and sort of newer developments such as hydrogen developments as well. But and also one of the areas that has particular focus is carbon reduction schemes. So we deal with those as well. But before I really start my presentation, I'm going to introduce Chris Paddey from PADD Energy. Chris, I think you've had a lot of experience in this sector for many years, advising your clients on ESG sustainability strategies, and really helping them get on the road towards net zero. So with that, I'm handing over to you, and I think we're going to hear about some interesting developments that you've had recently, sort of like within PADD Energy, an exciting journey, but also some real life examples that will help sort of manufacturing sector to understand sort of like where they sit and what they can do in terms of their strategy. So with that, over to you, Chris.
There we go. Thank you, Christian. Thanks. So yeah, Chris Paddey. I'm the founder of PADD Energy. So we're a firm of consulting engineers. So we employ chemical engineers, civil structural engineers, process engineers, mechanical engineers, building services engineers. And what we do is we focus very much on this decarbonisation piece. In fact, very much what you were talking to just a minute ago, Sophie, about we're finding even very large corporate organisations with factories all over the world. I think that 44% that you mentioned, where people just don't understand what net zero is yet, or what's required as part of net zero, that's the gap we fill. So we come in and we identify to these companies exactly what is required in order to decarbonise their factory. We can show them the technologies that you need to implement a decarbonisation plan, and then we cost that as well for them. So we really help them produce a business case that they can then go to the likes of the British Business Bank and find investment to implement these solutions to create what in effect would be a net zero factory. So I'll just mention actually as well that I founded PADD Energy back in 2013, and only 3 months ago I sold PADD Energy to a company called Anthesis, they're the largest pure play sustainability consulting firm in the world. So we're now part of a much larger group who are a global sustainability consulting firm who focus much more on the scope 3 emissions, for those of you who are aware of the scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions issues around ESG. So we're very much a scope 1 and 2 mitigation type company from an engineering perspective, whereas the bigger group now are more of a scope 3 sustainability consulting firm. So from an engineering perspective, this is really how we approach a client who asks us to show them how to decarbonise their factory or their group of factories, wherever they may be. So we always start with phase 1, which is the analytics. This is the data bit. So often factories we find, because you're not having to capture the sort of data we need to show you how to decarbonise, this is often quite a difficult phase for us. So what we have to do here is try and gather as much data as we can. So this is natural gas data, this is electricity data, this is heat data. Do you transfer steam around your factory? Why do you transfer steam? Do you have compressed air? Where do you have compressed air? Why do you have compressed air there? And so we gather all of this data as best we can by visiting site and capturing all the information we can, as well as all of the background information that hopefully you have with regards to environmental reporting or energy bills and things like that. So we capture as much data as we can, which is phase 1, including sort of site visits to understand your processes. Then phase 2 is we call it a techno-economic modelling phase. So this is us working out which technical solutions we can implement on your site, and more importantly, which we can't for whatever reason. And then we cost those solutions as well. So we help you produce a business case once we've identified which technical solutions would work. And then we can help you put a business case together to go for funding or to self-invest, or however you decide to approach those particular projects. And then phase 3 for us is the implementation piece. So this is us working on your behalf as an owner's engineer, going out to tender for various projects over a period of time. We usually supply you with a roadmap or glide path, different names for these things, but just showing you where to invest over the next 5-10 years, depending on when your net zero date is, or whenever you settle on a net zero date to target. And we work with you to implement those schemes, those projects to get to net zero by a particular date. So the next 4 slides, and that's my slide deck done, is really just walking through a few projects we've done in the last 12-18 months, just to give you an idea and a flavour of what's going on. So the first one is a UK PLC company who make various sort of household products, and we were approached by them just to have a look at a number of factories for them where they make, they have quite large factories producing various products, and they'd been driven really by their stakeholders in order to produce a robust decarbonisation plan globally. And so we picked the first 5 sites globally for them, which were the worst emitting sites for them. 1 in Mexico, 2 in Thailand, 1 in Hull in the UK, and 1 in Germany, Weinheim. And what we did was we visited these sites, and we've done the 3 phases, well, the first 2 phases of work, which is initially going to site, gathering the data, and then getting into the nitty-gritty of a detailed decarbonisation plan for them, the techno-economic modelling piece. So we've now produced a solution for each site, and we've shown them to get to their net zero date of 2029. We've shown them exactly which projects to implement by which time scale, and a rough cost estimate for each one as well, so that we can work with them to implement those solutions and get to net zero on their 5 worst emitting sites by a particular date. So that was that particular one. The next one is a large dairy cooperative company, again a household name company, and this was very much driven again top down. So this was the chief executive deciding they wanted to be the first global dairy cooperative to be net zero, and hence we tendered for a piece of work with them that we won, and we've been able to work on all 59 sites globally for this particular organisation, and again produce this type of glide path down here for various different options. They wanted a minimum effort, minimum cost option. They wanted a balanced approach, and they also wanted an aggressive approach where if they invested heavily early, how quickly could we get to net zero across our sites? And I think the value that they had put on actually being able to increase the price of their product was intriguing with this particular organisation. So they'd actually worked out that they could sell their product for a higher price, unit price, if they were to be first to market as net zero for that particular product or those particular products. And interestingly, we actually identified with them that they had 2 or 3 particular products that they wanted to be first to market with, because they could increase the value more. And they had certain factories where they produced lots of different product lines, but we're actually just making net zero particular product lines where they believe there's higher value in selling their products at a later date. So that was quite an interesting concept of not just a net zero factory, it was actually a net zero product line within a factory initially to start with, and then moving further on into a full net zero strategy for the overall factory. So the next one here, this one is a global sort of food and drink company, and this was a slightly different commission, this particular one. Again, their head office over in Switzerland, that they'd actually instructed the particular site over in York as being their first net zero site, so they had to go out to tender and find somebody to write a detailed decarbonisation plan for that one particular site in York, which we've done, and that was very much a deep dive on this particular site because they had lots of steam, they had to move around the site, and interestingly, they had a quite an expensive combined heat and power plant on this site that was pretty new as well. Actually, it was only 4.5, 5 years old. And corporately, they decided they wanted to move away from natural gas very quickly, and hence they were willing to actually take the hit of, we're going to take the CHP out of the site, and we want a solution that is a completely net zero solution for this particular site as quickly as possible. So yeah, they were willing to take the hit on what was a very expensive CHP plant that hadn't actually paid itself back yet, but corporately they wanted to have their site in the UK as a net zero site, and hence, yeah, we did a deep dive there, which was, it was intriguing in the fact that they use a lot of steam to produce their products, and we've had to take out the complete steam system and replace that with a high temperature cascade heat pump type solution, some self-generation on site, and various other techniques to try and create a net zero factory, which was very much dependent on natural gas up until this year. So yeah, quite a tricky one, but interesting at the same time. And then we've started rolling that out into another site now, and also looking to do some other European sites for them as well. So I think then just the last example here, this was a project over in South Korea. So this is a large car company, three sites in South Korea that we had to go and figure out how to decarbonise. This is the largest of the three. Which is a huge site. All the blue roofs are the site. And then just out of picture, just down here, there's an aluminium smelting plant as well, which is pretty difficult to decarbonise. But yeah, a really interesting piece of work. You know, we've been on this piece of work for just over a year now, and yeah, trying to decarbonise something like a car factory where you've got all of those scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions around, trying to produce cars, which is quite a challenge. I don't mind admitting, and I think the interesting piece with this one was that I guess they just had a very different approach. Their stakeholders and investors were driving this particular incentive for them around decarbonisation, and their investors were offering, and I don't know whether this is a similar thing, Sophie, with you guys, but their investors were actually saying, if you have a detailed and very robust decarbonisation plan that we can buy into and understand and agree to, then we can offer you cheaper finance to deliver those solutions. And that's not just finance on the sustainability solutions that they are implementing. It was cheaper finance overall for the global business. So intriguingly, they were able to pay for our services out of the savings they were going to make on their global debt, I guess, within the business, which was just found quite intriguing, really. And that's something that's a project that's been rolling on for a while now, and then we've actually now been moved on to working for a sister company of theirs who make various car parts. Again, happen to have three completely different sites in South Korea, and they supply car parts globally mainly from South Korea. So again, just another example, I suppose, of the type of projects that we've been working on recently. So what I was going to do next was really hand back to Christian, because I guess the E element of ESG, I mean, personally from my perspective, we do the engineering bit, but there's often lots of I guess legal issues and technicalities that we don't tend to get involved in, but seem very complicated. So I guess, Christian, we're going to hand back to you just I guess to talk us through the E element of ESG from a legal perspective. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. To start off, I think I'm just going to give you a bit of an introduction sort of to Clarion and the approach that we take. We very much take a sector-focused approach to the energy and low carbon infrastructure sector, and I'm heading the sector, and across the firm, other lawyers from other service lines, divisions, sort of they come together, including the real estate department, the corporate, banking and finance, commercial, construction, regulatory, and we take the approach that from cradle to grave we're able to deliver the projects for our clients, so that the lawyers that we have sort of all understand the issues around the energy market and where they fit in. And obviously, where we are currently in our times, we are very conscious of the market developments in the UK and the energy transition that's currently happening in the market, which I've just put up a couple of sort of buzzwords here, and ESG is part of it. The COP26 and the climate emergency that a lot of local authorities have even declared prior to the Ukraine crisis, sort of that has really sort of like started pushing the ESG agenda forwards. And where we currently are in the energy crisis, sort of that forms part of it. And really the challenge that we have is we are in a world where we need to decarbonise from fossil fuels towards lower carbon emission projects, but that's not always easy, and that comes with its own challenges. And I've got here the put in the middle the energy trilemma of security of supply on the one hand side, affordability of energy on the other, and also dealing with carbon emissions. And historically, we've dealt with those objectives on their own, but really what needs to happen is sort of we can't really see them individually. We need to sort of link them up and deal with them all together. Otherwise, we're not going to really reach sort of where we need to be. So now, I guess the question comes: where do we as lawyers get involved with ESG, particularly the E element in this instance, and how can we help our clients? How can we drive energy efficiencies? How can we drive the road towards net zero? And one of the elements is obviously energy procurement, your procurement process, and that mainly boils down to the supply of energy, which will be governed contractually by energy supply contracts, whether it's for electricity, gas, heat, water, and within those contracts, obviously, you've got contractual provisions, and really the question is sort of, in particular, as a manufacturer, what flexibility do I have within those contracts in relation to the length of the term, for example, but also flexibility to trade certain energy volumes. And you as manufacturers might say, well, at certain times I want to ramp down my operations. Do I have an ability to give back the energy I'm taking at the moment? And there may be restrictions in the contracts through take or pay obligations, for example, and really to have a look at those volume commitments over a period of time, but also then really turning on the E in the ESG. What ability do I have to obtain green certificates through my energy supply contracts? And that's both on the electricity as well as the gas side. So so that's one element that we're getting involved with. Equally, on the energy regulation side, if people decide we want the ability to generate, distribute, supply, store energy at our own site or at a different site, we help companies to and our clients to structure those arrangements, because the generation, transmission, distribution, supply of electricity is governed by under the Electricity and the Gas Act. And if you're undertaking any of these activities, then you may need to be licensed, and in most circumstances you want to ensure that you fly underneath the licensing regime, and in order to be exempt, that's one of the elements that needs to be tested very carefully. So then I've put up the self-generation element versus the license or license exempt supply. So where do you sit on that? Is that something that might be suitable for where you currently are? Do you have the ability to self-generate? Rooftop solar, for example, combined with battery storage might be one. Larger manufacturing businesses might even put up a larger or a medium-sized wind turbine, for example, that will help them with their energy requirements. The various different types of solutions that are available in the market. I've put here the on and off balance sheet solution. So you might decide we've got enough capital, we can finance the solution ourselves, or go to a third party provider that effectively will then offer you and I've put it a bit further down, an energy as a service arrangement, and effectively run the show for you, and you're just getting an energy price by a company that deals with those elements and the actual asset itself and the operation maintenance of the asset itself. We work a lot, and sort of this comes into the energy supply, power purchase agreements, and the structuring around those. There are a real variety of types of power purchase agreements that are available in the market. So your conventional straight power purchase agreements where either you buy electricity, gas in, or you're selling electricity, excess electricity back to the grid. But then there are more interesting structures such as private wire power purchase agreements. Those are the ones where effectively the electricity does not go into the licensed electricity grid, but you'd need to have proximity of your energy generating plant to your manufacturing site, and by doing that and you're not paying for grid costs that you would normally pay for with a licensed supplier. But again, the projects are, every project is different and has its own requirements, and if your project lends itself to it, then a private wire arrangement might be an interesting one. I've also put a sleeved power purchase agreement on the slide as well. That the market with those had a couple of years ago really started off. It's gone a bit quieter, but where we currently are with the energy market, it might be something that's coming back. So that effectively is you're producing electricity, say for example on one side, but you don't require all that electricity, and you want to use that electricity at a different site. However, that's 20 miles down the lane, and you need to put that electricity through the licensed grid. But then again, depending on the setup and whether this works for you, it might be something to consider. We also then assist, obviously, we're not technical consultants. The technical consultants sort of do their bit and recommend sort of what's possible, what's not, and the likes of Chris with PADD Energy, for example, sort of the implementation of recommendations that come off the back of reports. We are then able to help and structure and view this from a legal perspective. Just to give you a bit of an overview of types of agreements, and I really don't want to go through all of these separately, but there's a whole variety depending on the type of project and what it is you're looking to do. And there are a lot more solutions these days than there used to be. It was easy back in the days where you just bought electricity and had an electricity supply contract and a gas supply contract, and that was it. But we are in a much more interesting world these days, with a lot more innovation, flexibility, and really sort of putting the power back into your hands as well of dealing with your energy requirements. The other element, obviously, is the reporting element. on the E in the ESG, and there's quite a bit of UK legislation that's been enacted with requirements on certain companies to make monetary disclosures. This streamlined energy and carbon reporting is one of those that looks at the scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. Scope 1 and 2 are mandatory to report. Scope 1 are the direct emissions. The scope 2, the more indirect emissions, such as including transport, for example, and then some companies also already decide to report on scope 3 emissions. That sort of like is drilling down further into your supply chain and really sort of looking further into that, but that's not mandatory at this stage. The Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme, ESOS, and we're in the next compliance phase. Again, if that applies to you, then that's a requirement, a reporting requirement on one element, and also recommendation of schemes that could be implemented to identify those in the report, and then the task force on climate-related financial disclosures to put an ESG scoring and helping investors to identify companies that are doing the right thing. And again, here we're starting to see more and more reporting requirements coming in. Obviously, reporting on emissions is what impact does my company have on the environment, but what we're seeing is a lot more is coming in. What impact does the environment have on my company? For example, my warehouse, is it in a flood risk area? Is it in a hurricane area? This is, I'm talking about more the US at the moment, where the requirements are a lot more stringent, and that's where then investors take a view whether to invest in your company. We also deal with climate change agreements and voluntary agreements, and help company with those. What else do we do? Obviously, legislation monitoring, and there's a lot going on at the moment. The ESG finds itself more into legal contracts as well. We're involved with the Chancery Lane project that's dealing with drafting that goes into mainly financing agreements, commercial agreements, but we're seeing more and more the construction industry, JCT, FIDIC, ICME, NEC3 or NEC contracts, that certain commitments on sustainability are being put as an option into construction agreements, and that's really to drive lower carbon projects, depending on sort of the impact of the drafting in those contracts. Sustainability is starting to make a real difference and is shifting risk balance in contracts as well. And then another element is obviously, if you do need to report through your directors' reports, for example, if we're also able to help you with the language, and you still want to be quite careful in how you communicate and what you communicate to the outer world, so that you're not being pinpointed for greenwashing, for example. And we've seen recently a couple of examples in the fashion industry. The likes of Boohoo, for example, have been accused of greenwashing. It's quite important, if you go out and say, I'm doing X, Y, and Z, then also remember you might be held to that and might be required to justify and prove sort of where how you're doing things. Some of you may have seen last night, Drax was in the news on and faced criticism on their sustainability claims that they've made, obviously using biomass as one of the energy sources in the UK. We're also how do we keep up with industry developments? We're members of the Renewable Energy Association, or now they're called the Association for Renewable Energy and Clean Technology, and also the UK District Energy Association. We're part of working groups within those organisations, and so that keeps us close to what industry is doing and what requirements are.
I'm conscious as chair I've got to keep us on time, so we're just about on time. What we're going to do now is just take a quick break. What I would like to do is thank Christian and Chris for bringing the E to ESG alive. So thank you very much for your presentation. I'm sure there's a lot more questions over coffee. Cheers.